Robin Lane Fox, an English classicist, historian and celebrated historian and author, can join us today. Born in 1946, Professor Lane Fox studied classics at Magdalen College in Oxford and went on to become a fellow and tutor in ancient history at Oxford, a position he held between 1977 and 2014. His research spans Alexander the Great to late antiquity, Christianity and paganism, as well as the Greek Dark Ages. Our founding trustee and Secretary Endowment Trust Fund will now introduce Professor Robin Lane Fox. Thank you.
I don't know anybody.
So the first person we sent a message was Robin, and there was no answer. Then we wrote to Paul Cartridge. There was an answer and he said yes, but subsequently he withdrew. Robin then asked, "Who are you? What is the Endowment Fund Trust?" So we wrote back to him, and he was very kind. He came here. He was with us for 3, 4, 5 days. He went to Seman. He saw everything. And what he said about sin at that time is a tribute that I think must be read out. He says, "What an honor to be speaking to you all at the end of our wonderful Alexander conference. Nearly a year ago, I received by email an invitation from a group whose name I did not know, the Endowment Fund Trust, asking me to come to Karachi to speak on Alexander all the way from Oxford. I said yes, and then I thought it's an internet. That is too good to be true. So I wasn't sure whether to come, and they explained that it should be an important conference, but here is what they did not explain. We have had the most wonderful time. We, all of us, go to conferences all over the world. We have never had such a generous and entertaining and demanding and intellectually intelligent conference anywhere. We have never had such biscuits. He loves biscuits. We have never had such biscuits. We have never seen such friendship, and I would like to pick on perhaps 3 or 4 things. You, meaning all of us, Sindhis who were there, who attended him, you are all so musical. We heard Abda Parveen imagine singing for us in Karachi. What an experience. Even those who, like myself, are not Sufis will remember this for all our lives. We heard wonderful Sindhi singing last night in the 7th Fort. We saw wild dancing of excitement in the Sufi shrines. We are charged by it. We came to discuss Alexander, the conqueror who entered Sindh and is still world's famous figure. This might have been difficult. Alexander fought battles here. He killed people, some of them way back, probably in your families. But we learned to think that we know of Alexander. Did he leave anything important? And we learned that above all, he left a legend. So Alexander, maybe if you call on him then he relates a story about the Aegean Sea where there was a big storm. Big storm. And the captain of the ship, he shouted, and he said, he spoke to the turbulent sea. He said, "The great Alexander is alive and is king." And amazingly, the storm stopped. And I was not so sick, and the weather all was quiet. And I said to him, "Does that often happen?" And he said, "Always." What he said then was, we had been through a very bad flood and that problem in Sindh and Pakistan. So he said, next time this happens, maybe if you shout at the sea, Alexander, they might listen to you. Then he narrated an episode to us. He said, once an Englishman divided people into those who said yes to life and those who say no to life. Whereas every single person we have met here says yes to life in sin. And it is so touching and exciting for us. We are all in it together. We have one life here, and we are people of kindness, hospitality, joy and thoughtfulness in a degree that really almost shames us English people, who can be rather shy and think they are sometimes a little more good for the people. No way, you are too good for us. This is, he said, for our people here. Then, of course, he talks about the endowment fund trust team. Finally, he said, we are told Alexander's mother, before she died, told Alexander to give a banquet and invite everybody in Greece who had never known sadness in their lives. And her son heard the words when his mother died. So he arranged a big banquet, not quite as big as the banquets we have been attending, and he sent invitations out to all the Greeks, all the Greek world on that day, and he waited. And he waited, and he waited, and nobody came. And then he realized everybody in the world has known sadness, and that was what his mother wanted him to understand. We have learned a different lesson. We have learned that all over the world there are people who can give happiness. And especially there are concentrations of people who say yes to life, yes to knowledge, yes to the world, however difficult, however the economy is difficult, the weather is difficult, the floods are difficult. You, meaning Sindhis or Pakistanis,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. There we are. How wonderful. Biggest audience ever. Now, if I speak like this, can you hear at the back? Okay? I speak Old English, you just have to accept that. Unlike Alexander, I'm old. Unlike Alexander, I don't hear. Unlike Alexander, I'm not sure I see. But like Alexander, I have very bad teeth. I will speak for about 40 minutes until I see you are bored. I'll make you laugh, I'll make you cry, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, here we go. Obviously, there are two Alexanders, the Alexander of history, of whom we know a little, and the Alexander of world legend, who develops not related to reality of his life and spreads throughout the world, beginning maybe 50, 60 years after his death. He's always lived on the boundaries of myth and history. But for Western observers, for the next 600 years, I quote, by India, I mean the geographic area in antiquity. Of course, I'm really meaning Pakistan, but you did not yet call yourselves that. India's literary dignity entirely depended on Alexander and his companions. So very briefly, in 327 BC, think of it, summer, he invaded down from Afghanistan, over the Hindu Kush, down the valley, with the encouragement of Indians who had left the courts of India and were encouraging to come in and either overthrow the monarchies or befriend their kings. So he had invitations. Now, the first thing is summer 327 BC. That is the first date, serious date, we can give in a sequence in the entire history of the Indian subcontinent, because it relates to Greek calculations, which relate to Egyptian calculations. So there is a change in our understanding of time. As yet, it will change. There is no archaeological evidence in the ground that Alexander actually came. We haven't found an inscription with his name. But instead, we have something invaluable: texts, literary works, written and quoting the histories of people who were definitely with him, his friends from youth at the time, who are looking for the first time in the world at the peoples of India, Pakistan. They've never been seen before. They're amazed, of course, by what they see. And the next important thing is that Alexander, who was later well remembered in Indian tradition, let's have a look here. It works. This is an extraordinary seal about 50 years after his death. You can't see, but on the neck there is an inscription of his name in the Indian Kharosthi writing, and that is owned by somebody who had admired him, who is clearly an Indian craftsman who has adapted his Greek features. It's not true, though you read it everywhere, that the Indians detested Alexander. As always, you can't generalize. But one thing we can say for certain about Alexander is that he was lost. He had no idea where he was, and it were two problems. First, he thought that the river Indus comes down and connects with the river Nile in Egypt. And so he could boat down it, and as we would say, he'd be home by the new year. Why did he think this? Well, he had reasons. He saw lotus flowers. He'd only seen them in India. He saw crocodiles and other similarities. So it was quite easy to get home, he thought. And secondly, he thought he was very near. He's coming down across the Hindu Kush Mountains, the top left, the Khyber Pass, not quite over there. He thought he was very near the edge of the world. Well, why did he think this? He thought it because he'd had a tutor far, far cleverer than me. Could I just say, the picture I show you now is one of the other great excitements of my life, and I'd ask you please not to photograph it or post it anywhere else. Here I am this autumn, sitting in amazement. We have found the very school, the real school, where Aristotle taught Alexander. And I am sitting along the walls of what were the boys' bedrooms on one side of the courtyard. And here I am with the great Angeliki Kotoridi, queen of Greek archaeology, who has been working to find the further courtyard beyond. I just want to say here two things. It is enormous. We had no idea what we're finding. We'll continue in the spring. We may find Alexander's school report inscribed on a piece of stone. Who knows? We may find somebody declaring undying love for Alexander. But can you imagine what this means to me? I am standing where Alexander stood, where Ptolemy stood. I'm standing and sitting in the previous picture. I'm sorry, I'm going back. I was crying with my book. I knew that Aristotle had sat in that very place, and just beyond, he had taken the boys through every word of Homer's Iliad. He edited a copy of the poem. He gave it to Alexander. Alexander took it with him the whole way to India. I can't believe it. It's all coming true around my eyes. I can't show you the big picture of what I am sure is where they school, where they learned to ride. There is a theatre, there's everything. So we have great respect for Aristotle, but his geography was catastrophic. He thought that the world, can you believe it, ended just beside the Hindu Kush. So Alexander came thinking it would be perhaps a month, and then he would stand, imagine, at the edge of the ocean where there was no more in the world. He conquered the lot, everything. Far greater than his father, far greater than the heroes of Homer, whom he admired because of his tutor. He was completely wrong. What did he find? Well, he found an amazing, unexpected series of peoples, civilization, languages. The Greeks had no idea back in Greece that any of this existed. And there were far, far more settlements and towns than anything in Iran. The Iranians are nothing by comparison. They're running around in trousers, the descendants of illiterate nomads. It's the Indians here who have so many thousands, and I mean thousands, of settlements. One contemporary describes how just beyond the Indus River, can we go back? Yeah. He saw, you see the river Indus? He said, and I went on a journey beyond the Indus, and in a month I saw 1,000 deserted villages on hills that had been abandoned because of the floods. This is the old Indus Valley civilization being seen for the first time by a Greek. He couldn't believe it. There aren't 1,000 cities in the whole of Greece multiplied by 10. It was very surprising. So I'm going to talk about 5 items beginning with the letter W. Then we'll begin, obviously, with a word about war. Yes, these are months of war. And yes, Alexander fought, and when people opposed him, he fought as hard as he could. He won on the battlefield. But if you sent him presents, you were treated generously, graciously. He gave you back your previous kingdom, though he kept the army under his control. And there were never revenge killings. There were never reprisals taken against people. But if you opposed him, you were flattened. There we are. That is Barikot Bazara up in the Swat Valley, rebuilt after Alexander flattened it for daring to oppose him. He had an amazing, an absolutely amazing army with which to do it. Some people opposed him. Oxycanus, down at Lakana, near Mohenjo-Daro, he opposed him, flattened. Right, others honoured with gifts and reinstated, as we'll see. What were his aims? I can't argue this now. I am quite clear that from an early age, he wanted to conquer to the eastern edge of the world, the southern, and if necessary, the western. He then controlled a lot. Glory, but also he could connect them up. He could bring, in the end, he could pacify them. There is one great mistake by historians. They write as if India-Pakistan was a peaceful paradise of a country, no fighting, everybody loved each other. Come on, you know Pakistan. They all had armies, and the neighboring rulers, they not just invented an army for Alexander, they had huge armies when he arrived. And they had been fighting each other. We hear it all. We hear how Omphi hated Porus, Porus hated bad Porus, Oxycanus hated Musicanus, who hated Porticanus, who terrified by Sambus. And Alexander thought, I'll get the lot to surrender, or I'll force them to. I'll join them up, and we'll make more of it. That's firmly what I believe. And he is aiming to get to the edge of the world. Well, on the way, of course, people have to be settled. Some of them are old, like me. Some of them are wounded. Some of them, like Abdul Hamid, have to walk down on walking sticks. You can't take them everywhere. And the question then becomes, do we have descendants of Alexander clustered in any area of Pakistan? Here we are. Are the Kalash, as they say, that slightly paler skin, are they perhaps descended from Alexander's settlers? What a lovely claim for them to make. But I just say they were tested, a sample of 100 genetically, and the results were published last year. No, they're not Greek. They're marvelous and they dance beautifully, but no, we can be sure they are not Greek. But then there are 2 robin-named foxes. One of them is a historian of battle, war, Aristotle, the ancient world, and the other one is a peaceful lover of flowers. I don't know whether the 2 robin-named foxes like each other. Some people like one, sometimes they don't like the other, but I am the same person. I just want to say that empires and armies come and go, but flowers abide. And up in the area of the Kalash in the Chitral Valley, when we last came, my companion Harriet Ricks made a superb discovery. There we are. This has never been seen as a flower since a report in 1820. Sharp-eyed, she climbed all the way up took this wonderful photograph, and I'd like you to know that courtesy of the ETF, who had arranged the trip, it appeared on the great Botanical magazine in Britain last year. How beautiful. So that's one side of my heart, that could be so. Now, the second people we know who make big claims are, of course, the Afridi. And here I want to say something not well known. They claim descent from Alexander, but what I can tell you is that they are attested in the army of the Persian king Xerxes, who invaded Greece from Persia in 480 BC. They don't know this. No, they are not descended from Greeks, but they have been to Greece, their ancestors. They tried to kill the Greeks, and then I think they all came home, and that is who their ultimate ancestors, with some additions, of course, have been. When I came last to Karachi, I had a wonderful question. I cherish it. A listener from the floor took the microphone and said, "You have mentioned the Afridi, Dr. Robin." I love being Dr. Robin. "Can you tell us, do you think it's possible that the great Shaheen Afridi, our fast bowler, is descended from Alexander the Great?" Anyway, no wonder he is the outstanding bowler in the world cricket scene. I'm sure, in fiction at least, the blood of Alexander is in those veins. How wonderful. Yeah. So, I also want to say that just like the modern Kalash and the modern Afridi, some of them, Alexander and his companions also, this is important, believe that many of the Indians they are meeting are in fact part of the great Greek family of peoples. It's amazing. They think they have been left there and are descendants of a much earlier conquest of India by the Greek god Dionysus. Shiva, perhaps, they had seen. Now, this is an amazing belief, and Greek Heracles, too. Why did they think it? They had seen up in the Swat Valley, they had seen ivy plants growing, the plant of Dionysus. They hadn't seen it all the way across Iran. They saw vines, hadn't seen vines. This was wonderful. And there were similarities in place names. So, as ever, they jump to conclusions. But what a wonderful conclusion. But the decisive thing is what they see all the way south, really, from Utch down to Karachi. The amazing gift of the Indians, still so true, as in Pakistan, for dancing, playing the drums, and music. And that is very much the speciality of the Greek god Dionysus. So when we last came, I was so honored. I went to the great annual celebration in the Golden Mosque in Sewan, where, you know, you would never go. But with the EFT, anything is possible. And to my amazement, I watched what was said to be so dangerous by the Foreign Office that nobody from Britain should ever go. I had the time of my life. Why? Well, they were by the thousand, they were dancing. The people of Dionysus came to life in front of me. Look at this could be my new life. Some of them my age. And I just thought, Alexander, you were right. They were all of them shaking their heads, singing, you know what it's like. It was wonderful. And I also, incidentally, was so honored to be inside the very holy shrine. And that is where, obviously, Lal Shabazz Karanda in the silver coffin, and I was so pleased to see those wonderful rose petals and the marigolds, and the people of Dionysus were so keen to show me. My heart was broken. Aren't I lucky? Amazing. People could not believe it when I returned to Oxford. All the specialists in Sufism said, "What? You've been in the shrine?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen the tomb." Marvelous. So I just want to make the point. People write, I'll return to this, about the other. We're always meant to, belittle the other. And in Britain, we're said to invent some kind of notional Pakistani and so on and try to diminish it. I've never seen this to be true. But Alexander's men, they do the opposite. Just think, Americans, in the terrible world of the Vietnamese War, did they try to understand the Vietnamese? No. They called them very rude names. They didn't think they were descended from Texas. Yeah. But think of it. The Greeks believe that all of you are more like them than you really are. I'm going to return to that. Now, my next W is women, of course. There are men soldiers. They're bound to fall in love with some of the women, or even not fall in love with them, certainly jump on them. And the most famous of the encounters in India is not with Alexander's wife, whom he finds in Afghanistan, Roxane, but with another figure, also a subject to books and operas, Queen Cleophas, imagined here. She came to Alexander with her children, notice, and her women and her wine. She had been left as the ruler of a city of the Assassinians in the Swat Valley, and she surrendered to Alexander, who graciously and typically reinstated her as the queen. But the historians suggest there was more. The crucial one says, not always realized, it is certain that she then had a son who was called Alexander. From whoever was the father, we cannot be sure. Okay, probably not Alexander, but she was so impressed by the conqueror, the man who had taken her city, that she named her son after him. So don't generalize. There's never one attitude to a conquering figure. Some people realize they're rather marvelous. Now, Alexander came on south, and they came, of course, to the great city of Taxila, already a big town when they arrived. And there, his companions looked around at what they saw, and of course, they wrote comments about the women. What did they say? They said they were so beautiful, they were so graceful, and they were also extremely modest and well-behaved. And they watched, and they're right, I think, and said that poor families sometimes will bring their daughters, imagine, it's attested in Indian literature, to the marketplace, and they will then strip their clothes, first on the back, and turn them round, and then, hey presto, the front, in order to be able to find them a husband and get them bought in the market. There's evidence for this in later Indian sources. And any of those who are too ugly or too fat are given away, say the Greeks, as prizes to the winners in boxing matches. Amazing. We've got to assume it happened. And of course, they also have noticed something else, which shocks them. And this only was observed around what is now Amritsar and near Lahore. The practice, of course, of sati, how when a man dies, all his wives are then burned on the funeral pyre with him. And the Greeks were so puzzled. Why does this happen, they wondered. They came up with a wonderful answer. They realized that very forceful young Indian girls were married off to boring old men like me. And before very long, of course, the girls were discontented with me. So they all took lovers and they wanted to poison their husbands to get rid of them. And the husbands had introduced a rule that if they poisoned or one of the husbands died, the girls would be burned. That was the Greek explanation. It's wonderful. Well, it's not really true. Of course, it was for reasons of family property, not wanting widows and all the other tragedies. And of course, the custom continued for years and years and years. But the Greek descriptions of it are among the first and seen just near Lahore. Never described down here in Sindh, so it wasn't everywhere. Well, what could you do with these beautiful women? I'm so sorry. I'm afraid this great beauty is from Lahore. If she were from Sindh, she'd be even more beautiful. But the Greeks tell me how to persuade her. They say, the Indian women are so modest, but if you give them an elephant, you are sure to seduce them. And what is more, the Indian men say that it's not in the least bit disgraceful. If your beauty, ladies, is worth an elephant, it is something exceptional and awesome, and you should be proud. I'm so sorry. I'm afraid my elephants haven't managed to come with me, especially to Karachi. I have several candidates in the audience, but you're safe. Well, there we are. Now we come to the next W, war elephants. Well, what can I say? To think Alexander, a great scholar, has written, is to think elephants. The Greeks had never really seen them before, let alone in Greece. And they had seen them with Alexander in the Persian army, at Susa, the big battle in Gaugamela, but it is above all in India, and particularly from Taxila down to Uch or Allur, that they and Ceylon, that they really, really meet these amazing animals. They can hardly believe it. So, various points. Remember that a war elephant, or any elephant, can only really be ridden by the person it knows throughout its life. So when you read of an army of elephants going off to fight in Greece, every one of them has an Indian man or woman with them who is able to drive the car, as it might be. They don't travel alone. They won't. They're very, very loyal. And the Greeks know this. A wonderful picture designed on Greek models with the famous turret, the howdah, possibly a Greek invention, and the dragon, Greek-style dragon on the cloth. And I think that we have several of these, that they were plaques for the harness of gold and silver, which rich elephants were given as their decoration when they rode into war. And there we are. But the most famous ones we have are best witness to Alexander's activity in India are these, the famous big coins, which I will just quickly try to explain. There on the elephant, you have King Porus. He is the one at the back with his driver. And here is Alexander. They're very worn on his famous horse, Bucephalus, who is trying to attack Porus. And then here is Alexander in his helmet. And above him, there's the figure of victory crowning him. And in his right hand, you can't see well, Alexander is holding a thunderbolt, showing that he has the favor of the god Zeus. These are, of course, quite remarkable coins. I have argued, and I think, if I may say, I've now been proved right, they were not struck in India, but on his return in the Persian center of Persia at Susa. But what we can say is that in the story of Alexander riding up, their contemporary, riding up to Porus, not to attack him, trying to persuade the brave king not to go on fighting, to dismount, and like one king to another, he then reinstates him. He sends a young Indian who is a friend of Porus, who is called Meroes in Greek. And scholars now argue very powerfully that Meroes is really Maurya, and this could be the first mention of Chandragupta. Chandragupta Maurya, founder of the Mauryan dynasty. And when they said to Chandragupta, who conquers all of India after Alexander, but how did you do it? He replied, I saw Alexander when I was a young man. And that could be it. And he was said every day to offer, when he crosses over the Jhelum River, site of a big battle, to offer honor to Alexander. So Alexander made an impression. He made an impression, possibly a child, on Queen Cleophas. He made a big impression, not just on me, but on Chandragupta, the first of your big rulers. But he studied elephants, and he started to understand how they behave in battle. I'll now be personal. I'm the only person, I think now, you will ever meet who has understood the same. Amazingly, in 2004, I was chosen by Hollywood to be the historical consultant to Oliver Stone's huge picture, film picture on Alexander. And he asked me what I would like. Well, I thought, I don't want the money. I know what I want. So I told him. He never recovered this surprise. I said, I want two things if I'm to help. I want to ride in the first 10 of every cavalry charge in battle involving Alexander. And I want my name in the credits preceded by the words, "and introducing." No other director, except Oliver, would have done his best. He went off to interview the great figure Fidel Castro and sent me from Cuba a postcard he had found of the Cuban cavalry going into charge with their swords drawn, and wrote on the back of it, "Dear Robin, thinking about it, I see you up there at the front." My agents, who take 10% of anything you earn, were horrified. How do you take 10% of a cavalry charge? It became a legend. It's the best thing I ever did, and in case you don't believe it, here we are on the right, me on my loyal horse Gladiator, in the front with Alexander's army. And I learned something then later when we were filming in Thailand, that is in the desert in Morocco. If we were told to be very careful, gallop through the trees, stop on a hill, and don't go any further. And out of a man-made jungle came 24 armored war elephants with their heads down, with extensions on their tusks, thundering towards us. The horses had lived with the elephants, they knew them. We thought, my God, I know how to ride. I couldn't control it. My horse went left-handed. And then I understood. Only 5 of us had got that far. A horse will always go left-handed in fright if an elephant is coming straight towards it. This is very important, and I discovered from the elephant experts that an elephant only feels vulnerable if you attack it from the side or from the back, because he's worried about his testicles, which actually in men are quite small compared to yours, but they are high up between their legs, and they're worried that they'll be assaulted. People have argued for so long about the accounts of the battle with Porus, the Indian monarch. They've changed the text, they've altered the Greek, because Alexander seems to send some of his cavalry right over onto the left wing to go out left-handed and come round in this strange direction. And people have said it's been miscopied, it can't be right. It's absolutely correct. He understood what I learned the hard way. I had done it, but failed to get the elephant to do the same. Our great shot, can you believe it? There is King Porus on his elephant, and there is a stuntman on the horse that I've managed to get onto its back legs, but never at the right moment, in the middle of the Moroccan jungle. What a chance to discover at the first hand. Well, what did Alexander ride? He didn't ride an elephant, nor did I have to tell you. And what amazing animals they were. We had 24 of them. And when, I still can't believe it, when the filming finished in the middle of Thailand,